we could call this meeting to order at 5:07 p.m. on November 6th. Public participation, did we get anything, Ann?
No.
No. That's number one. Number three, policy discussion. Joe, is that something that you wanted to start with?
Yeah, I think what'll end up happening is Ann and I will probably go back and forth.
Sure.
We'll keep it loose, but so basically after our last meeting, we talked about getting into some of the irrigation pieces and things like that. We thought it made sense to look at two places first. So before we get into anything, it's really how we receive the paperwork and who may or may not be eligible for different types of relief that can be given out. And the two big ones that we see all the time, believe it or not, are actually related to pool abatements, and then obviously the disputes, that the board will hear from time to time. So we threw together a whole bunch of different stuff based off of some of our experiences and things that, we thought needed to be more black and white, right? Because the way some of the old policy stuff was written, it left a little bit up for interpretation. We're trying to take that out of it, so there's no guesswork, or it's less, discretionary, things like that. So I sent that to everybody yesterday, later than I wanted to. I apologize for the late read, but I was thinking we could just kind of go through each document and kind of talk it through, see if there's any suggestions, edits, comments from the board, and then ultimately leading into a vote of recommendation, and then we'll adopt this workflow for each one of these things is kind of our standard operating procedure. So the short answer of it is both of these two documents, when we get finished reviewing them and tailoring them to our liking, will basically become how we receive the documentation, and then it'll kind of set up the lane that both of these two operate in. So again, just trying to make it a little bit more black and white and cover some of the things that I don't think were addressed in some of the older versions of this that have been done throughout the years. The last two times these have been looked at, I believe it says it's 2010. So it's been a little while. Some things have obviously changed. And this is something, periodically probably will be sort of a living and breathing thing. So as times change and different services and laws and regulations and all that stuff, kind of move along as they do. We'll have to update certain nuances to all of it to kind of stay with that. One additional piece that I did have that I didn't send to you because I had some questions for town council was a policy related to theft. But I had some questions. Basically, what it'll end up doing is probably mirroring what Mass General Law says. But there are a few points in reading through it that I had some questions of Mr. Mullen that I figured would come up here. So I've asked some of that preliminarily. And once I get an idea of what his recommendation is, we'll visit that too. Then we can get into the nuts and bolts of this and put together how we'll get into the second meter thing. Then we'll put together a policy of how that works with a little bit of rate work, and then we'll give an updated presentation to the council. So I think at that point, I'll probably pull up these documents and we can walk through it. But I'm totally open to suggestions. I'm not going to assume anybody had the time to read through all of it because you got it kind of last minute. I was thinking we could just kind of go line by line if that is the purview of the chair.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
I'll start with pools because it's probably going to be a little quicker, I would say. Hey, Ann, are you the host?
I don't think I could be.
I am. Hold on. I need to give you permission, huh?
Oh, if you could just make me co-host, I think I can share it.
Yep. Here you go. You should be all set now.
All right, can everybody see the Word document?
Yep.
That's it for me.
Yep.
All right, so this is essentially what I sent you yesterday, and I'll just start. I'll kind of take it paragraph by paragraph and just stop and talk about it. If not, we can keep moving on, but we'll make sure we go through the whole thing. So off the bat, we're basically just given a definition. Abatements to be granted to property owners for new installations of swimming pools that require a complete initial fill. Only installations permitted through the Wakefield Building Department are eligible. Temporary pools, repairs to liners, topping off, and hot tubs are not eligible for abatement. So really what this whole sentence is, two things. So we want to make sure that anybody that's eligible for abatement is squared away and the swimming pool is in fact legal, to make sure it meets the setbacks and different things like that. So we piggyback off what the building department has. And as long as you have a valid building permit for it, we're going to consider that to be up to snuff. Some of the things we get questions on, people will actually come in and ask about, little inflatable pools that they pick up at Walmart or whatever for the kids, a repair to their liner or something, where they have to service their pool and they're essentially topping off. And then hot tubs are something that come up too. And the problem that we have with this is that it's tough sometimes. A temporary pool is what it is. Obviously there's generally no building permit for it. That's something that we don't really know if it meets different setbacks, how it's impacting, abutters and things like that. So naturally, for us, the stance has always been to not honor that. One of the biggest issues, I guess, or the hardest things to try to quantify that was not addressed in anything previously is repairs to liners. These things involve a lot of discretion, a potential discretion on our staff's part. What constitutes a repair because it's a failure? Is it something that's self-induced? How do you calculate, the water that's consumed for a partial repair that involves a slight, elevation drop in the capacity of the pool? If you're doing a complete initial fill, it's easy. The dimensions are what the dimensions are. We can calculate the volume and come up with a concrete number of the gallonage that's in that. The repair thing is kind of subjective to both the person that's presenting the repair and then someone from this side who's looking at that, trying to figure out, well, what did actually get used here to do this? Then the same thing with topping off. Every once in a while, we'll get a request from someone or an inquiry from someone saying, it's been hot, it's been dry, our family's been out enjoying the pool. We love it. And, as naturally, you splash around and some of the water goes over and gets wasted, for lack of a better term. They'll inquire about, getting an abatement for topping off. So that's something, again, kind of like the repair to liners. It's very subjective. And then lastly in this list is the hot tub thing. So generally, we haven't done any abatements for hot tubs. We're really just continuing suit with the stance that we've had for, at least my whole tenure here. Hot tubs being a little bit different of an animal. Yeah, they're permanent. They don't necessarily always follow the building permit. I feel like they could be easily drained and not drained. So that's about, that's the explanation, at least of that, or at least the mindset behind that opening paragraph. So I'll stop here if we want to debate anything here. If everything sounds, like it's good, we can keep going. If you have questions, again, I don't anticipate us being too rigid on our end as far as this conversation goes. So
Joe, do you want us to jump in with like I have just some more sort of editorial thoughts on
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really, consider these two things. We're going to go through the brain dump, right? So we threw everything that we had. We tried to identify everything, that comes up and get it down onto paper. But certainly, yeah, that's what we're looking for, is any comments, edits, different things like that, so that we can get this to something that both sides are ultimately comfortable with.
I definitely think, like, right up front, well, first of all, I think the first paragraph should be split into two sentences because it's a little confusing where it starts to say temporary pools. I think that should be a different sentence. But I think it would be good to write up front in that first paragraph, state that we're talking about the abatement of sewer charges for, for filling a pool because it's not going into the sewer. So the people don't think that they can get an abatement on filling their pool just for the water that they use to fill their pool.
And I think actually, when we look at the second piece to this, that actually becomes a little bit more apparent further down in the document, but.
Yeah, it's definitely stated in like that fourth little paragraph, that sentence there, to be eligible for a sewer abatement. But I just feel like it should be obvious right from the first sentence that that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about abatements for water use, just for the fact that it didn't go into the sewer.
Nope, good point. What's everybody's comfort level with kind of what's been identified as ineligible?
So reading the old one, it sounded like you were entertaining refills. Like if the pool had to be completely drained for some reason and then refilled, that was that qualified, but this is saying only with a new installation. So is that what you're intending?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Andy. That's one of the toughest things is the refill. I don't think a complete liner replacement is something that we're necessarily opposed to. I think at least in the first run through this, it's tough because someone might have a repair, right, which doesn't constitute a complete, draining and redo, of everything that's in the pool, and then it becomes tough because, like I mentioned, I could calculate an 18-foot round and I know exactly what's used there. But if you're telling me you only needed to dump like 2/3 of it to fix the skimmer or something on the pool, well, now I don't know. I don't know what exactly that number needs to be in order for it to be fair to both sides, right? The person that's seeking relief, but then the other 8,000 ratepayers that might not be getting that same advantage.
And maybe it is too nuanced to say that for a complete liner repair, you're going to allow the abatement, because then maybe someone's doing a repair that really only requires 3/4 of the pool to be drained, but they're going to drain the whole thing so they can qualify for the abatement. I mean, we don't want to encourage people to be more wasteful so that they
Agreed.
can get the abatement.
I think you bring up a good point too. Like you hate
point.
to you have to think that way, but I guess consensus on our side from reviewing these every day, at least in the administrative office here, is we felt like the way that this is written, we have it's the most closed in for a potential liability that we really can't necessarily say concretely is one thing or the other. So that was omitted, I guess, or at least the first draft of that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. If that's your intention, to have it be only new pools, only the first time you fill it, it's a one-time deal. And then that's it.
Because
I
we
think
do get a lot of people who have in-ground pools who during the changeover, they lower it down below their lines, and then they come in and say, oh, I had to fill it almost halfway. Can I get one? You know what I mean? And then they
Yeah.
come back the next year, same
Right.
thing.
Yeah, and that's
be
not
fair.
a good use of anybody's time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree as well.
I would maybe even go down on that 90 days. I mean, why not 60 days? Like if someone
So
filled
we,
their pool
yeah,
in,
we could get there. So that was just kind of the first shot at this, but just to cover the next sentence. So obviously, I think this is pretty self-explanatory that, any relief or abatement is obviously only going to be what the calculated water capacity is. Especially when you link that up with the full replacement, if the math says it's 1,000 gallons, it's 1,000 gallons. It's not 1,200, it's not 900. It is
yeah,
whatever the math says that it is. The other thing we did just for consistency's sake, knowing that there may be a timeline that we want to talk about, we wanted to make sure that, let's say someone was to install a pool in June, but we didn't see a request for an abatement until after the first of the fiscal. Well, in that period, the rate changes, right? So depending on how that changes, they could actually potentially receive more relief than what they were actually, what the rate was at the time. So again, we piggybacked that and just said that the applicable rate was going to be whatever the rate was in effect when the building permit was issued. So we thought that was just a layer of consistency, with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As far as the 90 days, so that's totally up to, conversation here. I think at least probably in my head, I use 90 days to say, that sometime between whenever you fill out the paperwork, or whatever the instance is, and wherever you fill out the paperwork, we don't really want that to go much further than the next billing cycle. Believe it or not, we actually will occasionally have people come in and talk to us about something that happened years ago. And with that, it's almost impossible sometimes the further you get back, the grayer it gets. So we'd like to have it. So kind of like, whether you're filling out a defect claim with the town clerk against something in the public right away, or even an abatement on your taxes, there's a time period where if you're not within that, you actually get time barred, and it won't be considered. So we put 90 on this, but it's totally up to conversation and debate. Whichever if anybody has any strong feelings one way or the other, we're more than hoping to talk through that.
I guess now that I've said 90 seems generous, I'm thinking there are going to be those people who don't realize they can get an abatement, and they're not even going to call to ask the question until they get the bill, and then
Right.
they're shocked by the amount. So maybe it should be 90 or even 120 days or something, just to capture those people, so you don't have to say no just because they didn't realize how expensive it was going to be.
I agree. Yeah, I think we probably should have at least one billing cycle so we eliminate the shock.
Absolutely.
So if I'm just talking this out as I'm taking notes. So if that's the case, is there a specific amount of days that even need to be referenced, or you just say?
I think you want to have it. You want to have it in there because like you said, people, you don't want people coming back a year, 2 years later, and
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking between the 90 and 120, I probably would go with the 120, just so that way there's been more than one billing cycle. And then if somebody were to come back, it's more than ample time, I think.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay, so then the next piece of this, as we move further on down, so.
So I would just say too, not to cut you off, sorry, but to agree with Elena as well, we should have two separate sentences too, right? So it finishes with department will be eligible, and then boom, a new sentence at
Yeah.
the top, temporary
Temporary
pools
pools.
repairs. Yeah, I do agree with that also. That should be
Yeah,
two
so I
sentences.
took that down as a note. What I'll end up doing now.
Perfect.
I don't want to do it live because I don't want to make it any more confusing
Yeah.
than it is. Follow this along. What we'll do is we'll update it and then I'll send it back.
Perfect.
With all that into it. So the next big piece of this in the middle is the account information. So one of the things that we find ourselves doing all the time is sometimes if we need to get in touch with someone, there are accounts out there. We have great information. We can get right to who we need to get to, have a quick conversation, and a variety of things. We can get a reading, inquire with someone about what the usage is going on there. You name it. For every great account that's there that's super up to date, there are also some that aren't so awesome. Where we might have an old telephone number, a cell phone number isn't something that's working. So we want to make sure that before we consider any of this, that we have the information on file to get really the main person of contact, that needs to be working with us, God forbid, should we have to get in touch with them. So we kind of put something together to make sure that we capture all that in this. The first bullet there about the water meter and the outside reading device. This is largely included in here because I feel like more times than we'd like it to happen, people are siding their houses, people are painting their houses. Something's going on where the little reader on the outside of the house or the wire that's connected to it is either removed or cut. And then when that happens, we're chasing our tails trying to make repairs to that so we can read it remotely and different things like that. So really what this first bullet is saying is that, for us to consider anything that, both the meter and the outside reader need to be in a state of good repair so we can read it remotely. And really it's just a catch-all to kind of leverage somebody that may have painted the house that might not be in a rush because it doesn't affect them to get that reader on the back out, back on the outside of the house, to kind of get them into doing that. If we run into it that way, we spend less time, chasing repair orders and getting no reads and things like that. So that was kind of the nucleus of that first bullet there. The rest of them are essentially, and I won't read them verbatim, but really just, things we want the person to contact, a valid telephone number, an email address, should they have a valid one and use it. We understand that not everybody does that, so a phone number will suffice. The third one is actually an interesting piece here. So in the event that someone owns multiple properties, so whoever owns the account where they're seeking a pool abatement, we also want to make sure that all of the rest of their accounts are in, a good financial state. So we want to make sure that, it encompasses everything that, a certain entity might own. So we wrote in there that, anything that's in arrears, subject to lien, a payment plan, or other undue balances is something that, we probably don't want to entertain, especially where this is a luxury. So if you're having trouble, keeping up with, the normal, day to day, this is something that, probably should come secondary to making sure that that first obligation is squared away. And then the last one here is pretty obvious. So very, 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 very rarely, but in the event, there's any previous violation of theft or tampering to any of the systems, we would consider that, or we'd like to consider that an automatic denial of the application. I know that was a mouthful. I apologize, but
That all sounds good to me.
That's
Yeah,
all
same here.
pretty straightforward there.
Yeah.
As we get into the next piece too, we'll see this verbatim again. But just to round this out, so for required documentation, so what we'd like to do is make sure that when we want to put it out there, we want to put it in writing that if you're applying for a pool abatement, when we get the application, we don't want to be chasing, we don't want to be reviewing anything that's incomplete. So we want to make sure that upfront and transparent, it says here are all the things that we need for us to consider this. If we don't get everything that we need, we're not going to consider it until we do, essentially, which involves a complete application, so completely filled out, a copy of the building permit for the pool construction, like we referenced earlier, some sort of purchase, construction contract, something, a legible receipt. Really what we're looking to capture through this is that the pool was installed and when it was installed. And then anything that could dictate to us, from a third party of what the size of the pool actually is, so we can calculate, what that the water usage is. So, length, width, height, even from the building permit. If it's something that comes in and we have a receipt from Namco Pools that says it was 18-inch round and 4 feet deep, we could get what we need from that, but that's a little up in the air. That could be a variety of different things, but essentially we need something that we could point back to and say, this is the size of the pool, and this is how the math works out to how much water was actually used to fill it. And then the last thing is, the date that the pool was filled.
Looks thorough to me. Looks good.
Joe, I think where it says documentation conforming, I think that should say confirming. Pool dimensions.
Oh, yeah. I'll fix that one. Right.
But yeah, this all makes sense to me.
Good.
All right, so just to kind of circle this one up, we'll take another run through it. I'll split the first part into 2 paragraphs to make it read a little bit better. Right in the beginning of the document, we'll add something to explain, that any relief would be for sewer only, not for water. We'll change the filing period to 120 days of filling the pool instead of 90. And then the last edit, conforming, will be changed to confirming in the end.
So just thinking out loud again, they only get to do this once. So for instance, they install a new pool, 5 years later, they decide to install another new pool. Can they do this again?
As presently written, yeah, it would count as a new installation, right? So in theory, do we think that there needs to be something that explains that, tightens that up, kind of gives a little bit better guidance to it?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I guess where I'm going is they might do an above ground pool and then say, oh, let's do a bigger in-ground pool. Yeah, I don't know. Certainly a lot of money. I wouldn't do it, but
So I think we actually referenced this in the other draft that you received, but do we want to include some language that puts a timetable on this so that, a pool abatement will be granted once every X amount of years, something like that? Is that what we're thinking?
I like that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like if you do one, let's say today, that'll start the clock, and then
Yeah, you can do that.
We'll come up with whatever, whatever the period of time is. You'll replace the pool as many times as you want, but you're not gonna be eligible again until, that first period of time is sunsetted.
What do you think might be an appropriate time period?
So on the other one, we use the period of 10 years.
Okay,
and
that's
they
actually,
use that-
that's the number that popped into my head too. So.
No, same here. It's funny. I was thinking exactly the same. Pool is probably about 10 years, right? I think that's fair.
So
Yeah.
in some of the, background, like internet work, we're looking at, what different people from all over, it's this New England centric as we could find. 10 years seem to jump out the most, although, nobody is completely apples to apples with this. Everybody, especially in New England, everybody does it just a touch differently. But if we were to include language that says 10, should that stay in the other document, at least then at least both time periods are kind of similar. So I'll add that to this in the next version of this that you see, so we can read through it again. And then at that point in time, we've had a little bit of time to chew on that and decide, if we're ultimately comfortable with that.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Are we okay with this one for now?
Joe, I just have one last quick question on this one.
Sure.
If there is ever discussion about irrigation meters.
Yeah.
That allows an irrigation meter, obviously, if you're filling a pool off of an irrigation meter, there's no abatement involved. So I don't know if you want to put that in now, because you're not paying sewer on that anyway. So, or maybe in that introductory sentence, it would be that this is an abatement for any sewer charges assessed in relation to the one-time filling of the pool, something that catches everything so you don't have to revisit the language if irrigation meters become a thing.
It makes sense to me. All right, can everybody see this one now?
Yes.
So this one is obviously a little bit more, this is a little meatier than the last one. This is basically, we took what the old, basically the cover sheet to the application, for any billing disputes that we might get, and updated it. I think if you had the chance to read through the old one, there was some things in that that we needed to kind of update. There was some things in it too related to the work orders and some other details that didn't necessarily make sense for it to be in there. So we removed some of that and kind of tried to make this a little bit more streamlined and easy to understand. But as far as the beginning here, so this eligibility piece here, this is exactly the same from the last document we looked at. Basically just making sure that before we'll consider anything or review an application, that everything's in good working order. We have all the contact information we need. The owner's accounts are all in good financial standing, and then there's no violation of theft, tampering, or anything like that. So that's exactly verbatim the same for consistency's sake in this one. We took a look at some of the things that we get requested for abatements on sewer. And we came up with a list of things that we recommending be ineligible for abatement. And I'll just run through this quickly. But so premises is left unoccupied, abandoned, or vacated without reasonable care for the plumbing system. And the reason why we put this in here is because as crazy as it might be to hear this, we've had instances where, someone will, mostly flippers, will buy a home. They'll kill all the heat in it because they don't want to pay the heat to the building, but they won't turn off the water, and we've had burst pipes. Typically, these ones are tougher to get in contact with people. I can think of one out in the east side of town. A neighbor called us and said that there was condensation on the basement windows, and by the time we were able to get there, they had a good amount of water in the basement. Turns out that the property was sold. Somebody was going through the process to demo it, so they turned the heat off. They just never did anything, related to the plumbing. It froze, and then obviously, the rest is history. So, someone that does that comes in is looking for an abatement on the sewer. We feel that they probably should have taken a little bit more, a higher level of care as far as due diligence was concerned. For whatever reason, I don't know why everybody forgets to turn the water off, but this has been something that's come through the office a couple of times, believe it or not.
If you're demoing houses, you know enough to turn the plumbing system off.
Yeah, I would think so, especially, in New England, it gets cold and there's no
Yeah.
heat.
Step one.
So consistent with the comments we just got back on the first review, so no more than one occurrence in 10 years. It basically would mirror the comments that the board just provided. Irrigation systems, so leaks in those, broken heads, damage to it out in the lawn, lawn watering, things like that. Irrigation systems specifically, they're out in the elements. They're subject to dirt, debris, different environmental things. It's tough to kind of control that. Sometimes those things can get impacted by a variety of different things, unless things change. They've been looked at least for the past 2 decades as more of a luxury. So, we want to make sure that if you do have a system, that you do keep it in good working condition and don't neglect it. Again, because it's not fair, to the other ratepayers that may have to pick up some of the slack, if there was some relief granted here. So we included that in this list. We included bills that claim to be lost or not received. So that's from time to time we'll hear that. I can tell you that the post office certainly bills us for the 35,000 bills that we send out every year. Unfortunately for us, The chain of custody ends when the post office has the letter and delivers it. You know, we do a lot of conversations with people, you know, reminding them, you know, here's when the bills come out, you know, July, October, January, April. And we encourage people to actually, if they haven't seen us, call us. You know, because you know, around the beginning of every July, if you don't have your bill by the 15th, you probably need to call us because something's up. So that's in this. Premises under construction and major renovation. Again, this kind of points more towards like what we talked about in number 1. Unfortunately, you know, there are some people out there that don't really exercise the care that they need to, and may damage things that cause leaks. And then, you know, ultimately come in and try to seek if they could get some sort of abatement or relief for it. In reality, if you spent a couple of minutes up front, you could have avoided it altogether. Number 6 was something new, but we found, you know, what we don't want to do, if we can avoid it, is, you know, encourage complacency. You know, one of the things we want to know, if you have a leak or you have a question, we want to know as soon as you have it, because we have no problem rolling our sleeves up and helping stop, fix, find, you know, whatever might be going on. So we want to make sure that, you know, the customer, you know, takes some steps right away to try to, you know, detect what the leak is. Give us a call. Let us know that you think something's going on. What we don't want is the answer when we ask, you know, like, what do you think might be the reason for this? And the hands go up and we get kind of an, I don't know. You know, immediate steps, like I said, could just be a phone call to us, put us on notice, and we'll come help you. We'll give you leak detection tablets. We'll do whatever we can. We can read the meter from our desk. We'll tell you exactly when this thing's, you know, flowing, when it's flowing the most. So for those reasons, we have that in there. The other thing we'll cover a little bit further on, proof of the repair. So what we want to know is if you're coming in looking for anything, as far as relief is concerned, we want to make sure that, you know, something has been done. You've proved that, you know, X happened. I took step 1, 2, 3 to fix it. More often than not, it involves calling a plumber or something like that. But, you know, some type of documentation, whether it's the bill from the plumber with a little narrative on it, whether it's the before picture and the after picture showing, you know, pre-existing, post-existing, but, you know, something that shows that, you know, a repair was made, some sort of adjustment was made, and the issue is fixed, because that's what we really want to know. Meter tampering, again, that's pretty consistent with some of the stuff we've already heard. So we certainly aren't very willing, or we aren't very willing, really, if we go in and find out that, you know, the reason why something was leaking is because it's been tampered or touched with and broken. And then the other thing, we have estimated water bills. So this one, for Chris and Shane, if you get an estimated water bill, we've been reaching out. We'll leave a card every time we try to read it. We try to call. We'll even send certified letters. We want to get in contact because we don't want estimates out there, because we want to reflect what the true usage is. Every once in a while, someone that's been getting estimated water bills, it usually comes to head when there's about to be a sale. But you know, they will maybe ask for relief. But in reality, once we can get in and perform some service, we can get to the meter. There's an actual read on that we can get, and that we can correctly bill for. So we want to be able to do that. So for an estimated water bill, we want to consider that ineligible, to encourage, you know, the property owner to get in touch with us so we can get the actual read and we can make it, you know, exactly what is consumed. So before I go on, I guess, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerned with any of this in this list?
Joe, I just have one question. Should it be confined to one bill, or, you know, if it crosses over 2 bills, should it be confined to a maximum of 2 bills? Maybe that's getting into the next section too, because it says about the timing, but, you know, obviously if someone's been having a problem and the problem has lasted for 9 months, we don't want them coming in requesting an abatement back 9 months.
Right. That's a good point. So we identify that in the next section. I think, does anybody have anything else on this list of recommended ineligibles before we jump into that?
No,
No.
All right, so as far as the date for that, I mean, we could make it consistent, I guess, with the pool abatement policy. Again, this one, you know, we kind of gauge the temperature of what's out there, you know, what some other people had for examples. And you found anything really between 30 and 90 days. You know, we just took the first draft of this, we wrote up 30 days, within 30 days of the disputed bill's gross due date. So that's the last due date that's on that bill. It's not the discount date, it's the final one.
I like the
don't-
30 days. I kind of feel like, what if you get a bill? What if you had a toilet leak and it started, 5 days before the end of a billing cycle? And so you get your first bill and it seems like there's something going on, but you're like, I used a little extra water this month, this quarter. No big deal. Then 90 days later, you get another bill and you see that there was like continuous high usage throughout the period. When you come in for your abatement, are you allowed to go back into that prior bill as the time period? I guess that's really the question.
And I was just going to add, more often than not, they come in when they see the first big bill, but it is carrying on to the next bill because it's already started. So that happens
Right.
more often than not.
Yeah, that makes sense because you wouldn't know about it till you saw the
Right.
bill and then you're into the next cycle.
You're already into the next cycle because it may have been, by the time the bill goes out, it could be 30 days after
yeah.
your period has started.
Right.
I'm wondering for consistency if we do the 120 again.
And then all bills that you're requesting the abatement for must fall within those 120 days, or?
That's what I'm thinking, but open to whatever you guys all think.
I like the idea of limiting the 2 bills. So you're not having someone say it's been high for the past 4 years. Please look
Right.
back, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
You laugh, but that's happened.
I'm sure it has.
Yeah, I agree. That's it's fair enough.
Yeah, so the abatement will not be applied to any more than 2 consecutive bills.
Yeah.
So I will add that into this, but do we want to add that in replace of the 30-day period? Or do you want to add this into addition?
I think it's kind of a separate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So
So,
so they need to let us know 30 days after they get the bill. And then it will only cover 2 billing cycles. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
I do have one more question, jumping back to the previous section. With the
Sure.
10-year period, no more than once in 10 years. Like if you had a leaky toilet and you get your abatement of $50, and then 5 years later you have some catastrophic flood and you want to get an abatement on the sewer charges for that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if 10 years seems too harsh. If
So
I can see your
20's out,
point.
what's that, Ann?
20's out then? 20 years is out?
I mean, maybe it should be no more than 2 in a 10-year period. Because like if you're coming in for a third time, come on, what are you doing wrong? But maybe.
or do you add
Wow.
something after that, unless some type of catastrophic occurrence or something. If you didn't want
Or we could just lower it to every 5 years.
You could do that. The other thing you can also do is you could probably add some language to it that says more than one occurrence in a 10-year period. something to the effect of, anything in addition to that, needs to be brought in front of the advisory board of public works for an affirmative vote, something like that.
Are
I
we
mean, do you-
assuming that based on this policy, everybody won't have to come before us? Or do we only get the ones that are like disputed?
Yeah,
So what we're trying to do is take off, if there's anything that's very black and white and very small, and that, it makes sense, whether it's a variety of different things, a number is transposed, or if it's something very easily, fixed, what we're trying to do is not bog the board down with hearing every single one of these when, it's pretty much concluded very early that, the facts speak to it being very black and white. Because if someone had something, where they did have a toilet leaking, they brought in a plumber's receipt, they checked all the boxes, it all made sense. We could see their meter. They told us on November 1st is when they noticed it. We saw the spike on the meter for the day, and then the following, business day it was taken care of. That's something that I think we can handle here to our discretion. But then again, I'll leave it to the board. If you all want to see that or want to review that, that's fine too. I'm just trying to make sure that, we're mindful of your time too, being volunteers on this.
So how, I mean, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, do you get people at the same address coming in often for abatements?
yes, and yes, it's often repeat customers on the abatement.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
And some people we suggest they put a request in and they don't. They just say, oh, my mistake, I'll take care of it. But we do get a lot of repeat requests.
Hmm.
So one thing that we did in Melrose that I found very helpful is Lisa, who's our water and sewer billing administrator, she put together a flow chart that shows it's all just like sort of yes or no. Was there a leak? Yes, no. Do they have documentation of the leak? Yes, no. Did they get it repaired? And then, if you follow the flow chart through, you end up at a determination of what should happen with that specific case. And it will say, abate sewer only at the percentage, 100% sewer, or abate, sewer only at the percentage paid to the minus what's paid to the MWRA, whatever the different calculation methods are. And we've structured it now so that if Lisa is able to go through the flow chart and conclude what should happen with that address based on the flow chart, then she can do it without bringing it. We have like a little abatement committee. She can do it without bringing it to the abatement committee because the abatement committee agreed on the flow chart. And so anything that just fits neatly in there, we don't need to review that again because we've already said, yes, this is how you should handle that type. So, and then what she does is it's an Excel spreadsheet that she did the flow chart in. Like it's just graphics in Excel. I don't know why she did it that way, but when she approves an abatement, she actually takes that spreadsheet and like highlights the path of what that abatement, what the answers were for each of those, and then she saves that somewhere. So anyone ever wanting to go back and see why did she issue that abatement for that person for that amount, it's all documented right there. And then the only ones now that go before the abatement committee are the ones that don't fit the mold for any of the standard processes.
So,
And
Elena, does your abatement have a dollar limit on it?
No, not that I know of. And we don't share that flow chart with the public either, because, I don't want people like trying to calculate what they think they can get away with, based
Trying to
on
game
where
the
we live.
system. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an internal document, but it's really streamlined things and it's made it so that our committee meets like twice a year at most, and only has to discuss the oddball ones.
I think what you're doing with that is kind of where we're trying to get by getting this down on paper. You know, I'm gonna assume that it makes things super consistent, if anything, right?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think so. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to vote on any of this now, but I think we could put something together that kind of runs through that, and then add that to this conversation for sure.
Like a
yeah,
check.
and
check
feel
off
free
list.
to ask Lisa to send you what she did.
Yeah, we have something similar that we kind of do. So when it comes
Okay.
in, whoever took the call pulls all the information. So they pull, they take the consumption history. They pull and see if they've paid their bill. They check our notes to see if they've had an abatement before. They sometimes will send someone from the office out and take a look at what's going on. Like, was it an actual or was it did the customer read it or whatever the story? So we kind of go through a similar process to get to it. And then if it's still legit, then it comes to me. And then sometimes it's easy. An elderly woman had a leaky toilet, or a plumber came in and fixed the toilet. So she comes in with the receipt and this, and then we can actually see, yep, we know what day it started on. You know what I mean? You can actually see
Yeah.
it go right up. We would just give her an abatement on the sewer. We take the last 8 quarters and we try to average it out to see what it would be. So if she's at 400, 400, 400, and then has a 1200, we know that's where the leak was. We know the date it was fixed because we have the bill, and then
Yeah.
we'll give the harder ones are ones like an outside water leak that affected their regular inside water usage. Those are harder for us to determine.
Yeah, so when they run through that first process, do they have like a checklist or something like?
Yeah, we have a little box they check off, and then they pass it all in. So we keep all those in a file. So if someone called and
Okay.
said, hey, 3 years ago, we'd pull it out and say, yeah, this is why you got it.
Okay, all right, yeah, so it sounds like you're already doing all that. So then we're only seeing the unusual
You're
ones.
seeing the problem.
Yeah,
The-
okay.
yeah.
Great.
And Elena, that's kind of highlighted in the older version of this. We removed some of it from it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Does anybody really have a large concern that we put a work order in through Munis to have somebody get us an outside read to make sure the leak is stopped? There was some stuff that was for us to check the box is great. Does it matter to the end user? Maybe not. But it's basically exactly what Ann has described.
Okay, great.
Just kind of moving through this. So the requests, be made within the 30 days of the disputed bill's gross date. Obviously, we wanted to include documentation to support the claim, so whatever that might be. Could be plumbing, receipts, photos, etc. Whatever might be useful, we encourage that to get sent to us or forwarded over. A demonstration, so with reasonable evidence that the service in dispute was not used. So really what we're saying there is that, if someone says my hot water heater let go, it let go on Saturday, the plumber fixed it on Sunday. Here's a picture of, all the water that leaked onto the floor. Something that says the water actually went somewhere that wasn't down the sewer. It's tough when someone comes in with a leaking toilet, obviously, because it does go down the sewer. But things like hot water heaters, burst pipes, things like that. I think a reasonable effort with some pictures and things like that can kind of prove that wasn't the case pretty easily. It might be a little bit redundant with the bullet before it, included in this draft. And then lastly, in this, we just ask that any of these abatement requests or relief requests be made at our office in person and then in writing. The reason why we ask that is because it sparks a conversation so we can start getting the ball rolling to get this addressed as fast as we can.
So 2 questions on this. One, we do give abatements for toilet leaks, right? So do we need to somehow exclude that from the statement that all water passing through is lost through leakage is, you know, is intelligible? And then exterior water loss from spigots left running or malfunctioning irrigation systems. We have entertained those for sewer abatement. So are
Yes,
we,
I think this is where those are two good questions. This is where I think this is language from some of the old stuff where it gets a little bit confusing. So the premise behind right here where my mouse is, so all water passing through the meter is the responsibility of the customer and will be charged to the customer. That's referring to the water side only, not the sewer side. So I think
okay,
defining that a little clearer will certainly help make this a little bit more understandable. And the same thing with the exterior water loss. So, essentially what we're saying is water that goes through the meter that, ran through your spigot and ran down your driveway because you left it on. There is no real, that was consumed, it was wasted, but it was consumed, and we know that it was. So from the water enterprise side of things, there's really no relief there. That kind of is what it is. So it would only be really on the sewer end. So I think cleaning those two up and defining that a little bit better, kind of like how we mentioned the sewer in the front of the last one, will make that much more easily understood.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't read it that way, so definitely could use a little clarification.
Well, that's why we're going through this, because sometimes we read it the way that we've been reading it forever, and it's good to have a set of eyes that's not used to seeing it every day, kind of give us a different perspective on it. So. So application review process, this kind of breaks down some of that workflow that we were just talking about. So essentially the customer completes the dispute form with us. We gather all their information. Again, we want to make sure that we have updated contacts, phone numbers, emails, whatever we can get, should the event that we have to be in touch. Usually, typically, it's mostly Anne that would take a quick cursory review right off the bat for completeness. As soon as we get that and we check all the boxes as far as contact information and different things like that, then we'll start to do the due diligence review. So like Ann said, past consumption and billing history, we always look at, it's remarkable, as you all know. Some of the tendencies that you can see through that, predictability that, people generally seem to have from time to time. We will go out and take another read from the system just to make sure. So if we get the paperwork today, we'll probably go out the next morning and take another read and see what the difference is. Really what we're doing there is we want to make sure if that is drastically different, or over the event of a couple days, if we do it, we see drastically different numbers. We know that something's still going on. While we're there, we'll do an outside kind of evaluation or an inside. Every once in a while, we'll get invited inside by the property owner. We generally will ask if we can. Sometimes that's easier to accomplish than not, but we are certainly not opposed to lending our eyes to anything that we can see, whether it's something that we could get involved with to fix or not. At least, we hope that by doing, these two inspections, that should we see something that needs to bring attention, we can at least point the homeowner in the right direction and say, I think, everything's showing me that you need to concentrate here, or, we might go in and see a leak that's happening that, someone might have not even seen because they're used to looking at what they're looking at and they've totally, overlooked it. Another thing we'll do too is in the event that this stuff happens, if the meter is of an age or a condition that we want to replace it, obviously we'll upgrade that at that time. The reason really being is because we want to be able to remotely read it. There are probably less than 200 accounts that still have some old meters out there that we're chasing to try to get up to date. Sometimes that's easier said than done. So if we're inside and the meter is something that's of an age or condition where it really needs to get upgraded, we'll do that then. Then we'll perform a bunch of follow-ups with the customer. We'll kind of highlight the results and review of the account status and what's kind of determined from that initial due diligence. So during that period of time, if we find that there's a billing discrepancy, the customer will get a corrected bill. So, we could have found out that, we're working off an estimated bill. They got in touch with us. We found out that, we didn't need to estimate it. One of the wires had backed out of the outside reader. It's an easy fix. We were down in the basement. We have the actual numbers off the meter. We have an updated reading. We'll adjust the bill so it's what the meter actually says. Estimations happen, in a period that, someone may use the estimated amount, someone may go under it. So we'll adjust that to make sure that it's the actual number. It doesn't, leave anything unclosed there. If we find out that everything's working in good condition, there's no leaks or anything like that, our recommendation is that the original build amount is due. So we're borrowing a little bit from the old abatement policy here, but essentially at this point in time, the options are, the customer can pay the amount that's billed. Should we not be able to find anything that's inoperative, or the homeowner can't find anything that's wrong. In the event that we do have to adjust the bill for the scenarios that I just explained, the customer could do that. The customer can also request from time to time a third-party meter test, or if they're still completely, not happy with the results of what's going on, we offer them the services of the board to kind of hear the whole story from beginning to end, and then ask for a final recommendation from the advisory board. So, and then the last little piece of this, it just included some of the third-party meter tests. So really, this is dictated by Mass General Law, and essentially what it's saying is, if someone is to request it, and it finds out that the meter through the American Water Works Association standards is testing good, which is a certain level of accuracy that they have to meet. I think it's 99% and above. Then the cost of that test will be borne to the customer. If it finds out that that test is done and there's an issue with the meter potentially, then that will be paid for, by the town. Meters generally run slow. They tend to wear out. They're inert, so the only way that anything moves inside of them is for water to be passing through it. So I don't know of any times it's ever tested fast, but in the event that that happens, we would own that and make the correction to that. So again, now at this point, should they go through, the third-party meter test and whatnot, and we get to the point where we find out the results of that, it's obviously the option to pay the amount as billed plus the cost of the meter test. Should the meter come back functioning correctly, if the bill needs to be adjusted, they can pay the adjusted bill, or they can request to have the advisory board review that for final recommendation. That is the end of this one. Thoughts, questions? You want to need to review anything different that we went over before and touch on again?
No, this is all. Nothing else jumped out at me really.
Okay. I think, yeah, I trust you with the process here. I think this looks fine.
I think the real goal behind it is two things, like transparency and consistency, right? So it's no secret. This is some of the things we're looking for and the lane that we operate in. And here are the options, to the end user. Should they be dissatisfied with whatever the results are? This board kind of acts like the Supreme Court. When it gets to you, this is where the buck stops, right? We want to make sure that those two things are kind of addressed with this. Then once we get in this place, so we know how we're gonna receive the paperwork, we know kind of the lane that we're gonna operate in, and then we'll start to layer in and build on, some of the other day-to-day things as far as, irrigation will be concerned as we work through it, so. I think if my notes are correct, and tell me if I missed anything, but to this policy, so I need to add some language, and the abatement will not be more, or not more than 2 billing cycles. We needed to update number 2 in the ineligible list, and I'll take a shot at some language to say the 10-year period, and then I'll add something in there that anything above and beyond that requires an affirmative vote by the Advisory Board of Public Works. Dan and I talked about maybe taking kind of what we have in writing in here. We might be able to visualize this too, just to give another way of looking at it. And then as far as the comments about the water passing through the meter and the spigots, we'll add something to that to make it a little bit clearer that is intended to be billed as a responsibility for the water only, and should there be any abatement, relief, what have you, that will only count towards a potential reduction in the sewer bill. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think, Joe, I'd like to have one chance, once you have it all edited and kind of finalized, I'd like to just take a read through in case there are any little things.
Yeah, so what I'll do is, because this is 99% done, I'll work on this when I get in tomorrow and send it back to you.
Okay,
And then for the next time that we work, I think I mentioned it in the beginning, you probably might have still been signed on, Elena. So there is one more policy related to this world. It's updating our theft policy because it is not in parallel right now with the way Mass General Law dictates some of the things that cannot be done. That'll be coming next, but I had a couple of questions that I needed to answer first before I felt comfortable presenting it here. So you'll probably see this in its final forms, minus a couple potential last minute language changes, but we should be able to do that through email. Then we'll look at the next piece to this, and we'll start dipping a toe in the water with, crafting what the nuts and bolts of the day-to-day policy will start to look like as far as the potential of the irrigation moratorium being reversed.
Joe, are any of these documents in any way referenced or discussed in any of the town ordinances or bylaws, or, is there like a water and sewer bylaw that references any of this stuff?
In totality, I don't know. I know there's some old stuff that we have here that references some votes of the what was once Board of Public Works. I'd have to take a quick walk through E-Code 360, maybe before I send you the final version with some of the edits that you've mentioned. I'll do that. I don't think there's anything in there though, but I'll go through the whole thing again really quick just to make sure that we didn't miss anything. But
Yeah, I'm only asking because if there's anything that needs to be changed in the actual bylaws, I would assume that has to go through town council. And we just want to make sure whatever we're issuing and putting on the website and everything as sort of our official new rules, we just want to make sure nothing's contradictory in the town bylaw.
no, 100%. So I'll go through that. I don't think so. I think really what happened through time is what used to be the Board of Public Works kind of set a lot of this up initially, and we've always kind of taken it, updated it as we go, type of deal. I don't think it ever made it to the point where it has too much substance in the bylaws, and then I think we just kind of carried suit when the Board of Public Works became the Advisory Board of Public Works. We still kind of kept the process flow the same with that. But I'll make sure, and if there is, I'll highlight it. We can talk about that. If we have to add an extra step, we have to add an extra step. That's not too big of a deal.
Okay.
Anything else on the policy discussion?
From our standpoint, we have nothing. unless Ann has anything to add, but
Next on the agenda was new business. Anything new?
the mad dash to fill everything up before we can get into the winter. Hopefully, the winter is mild. We'll see when we get there. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Ann mentioned it last time, but the new commodity collection, the scrap metal, is actually going very, very well. I think people are really taking advantage of that. I know it definitely fills up every weekend, and we're bringing a couple of tons a week. You know,
Wow.
to the
That's
scrap facilities. So,
What kind of
that's
money do we make off of that?
one can. So a 20-yard dumpster, we're probably seeing. I don't know, what do you got in?
I was gonna say around $150, $175.
Depends on what it is. So every once in a while, we'll have some of our own stuff that goes to, a lot of pipe that we've been sitting on for a while. Those loads tend to be bigger, but so $200 for a can that's generated on the weekend isn't super impressive, I guess. But if you think about it, right, that's 2 or 3 tons that we didn't pay $100 a ton to go through the landfill too. So each
Right.
can that heads out of town, you're really netting almost $500 a weekend of an overall benefit, right, to the town. And I can tell you the level of effort that it takes to do it is relatively minimal. It's
Yeah,
just
that's great. I think it's great. I like the fact that we have that option now.
yeah,
so the cardboard commodity and the metal commodity have been historically pretty good. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. If we ever find anything that's advantageous like that to add to it, we're certainly all in. But baby steps, these ones have been pretty good, so we're hoping that continues for a long time.
Great.
Right. Next meeting. Do we need to set a new meeting? What is it? So it's November. December is probably a crazy month, right?
So it gets a little goofy now within the next couple of weeks too, right? Because you have Thanksgiving and everything chops up the final week. I think from my perspective, we can meet. I'll send this out to you well in advance. So by the next time we review what we talked about tonight, it should be a very quick conversation. I don't think the theft piece or the tampering piece is going to be super, super long either, because Mass General Law kind of dictates a lot of it. We'll have a little bit longer of a conversation when we get into some of the other policy framework. But that will be the dominant piece of whatever the next subsequent meeting is, with the exception of an abatement request or something like that might pop up. So we'll leave it open. I don't think
Because
that works for the group.
would we be voting on something next, right?
So I think if everything goes the way that I think it's going to go, we don't have anything else to really. If you like the changes that we make to the 2 documents we talked about tonight, we'll probably be voting on those to recommend those policies be adopted. As far as that, no, I don't anticipate anything. We have a couple more conversations before we get into anything we really have to vote on.
Yeah, I mean, do we need, I don't know, do you need a certain, do you need a meeting before a certain date or anything, or?
No, I don't think so. So the only thing we told the council is that we would get something to them related to another look at the irrigation piece in advance of the rate hearings. So if we choose to take a little bit of time for Thanksgiving and Christmas, might add a little bit more work to our plate come like January after the new year. But I don't think it's anything that would be too crazy.
I mean, I can meet in December if you want to meet in December if it helps. I don't know what my other board members think.
yeah,
Obviously,
no, I could too. I was just looking like December 4th. It's still early enough. I mean,
Yeah.
December 4th, you know, but again, I agree. It's up to everybody. So,
That
So
seems
the,
fine to me too.
Yeah, because
So-
after that I get crazy for work.
you know, we could meet that, we could meet the 4th if it works. We can box up, kind of everything we have here. And then we'll have like a quick, like intro of the next step. And then, you know, we'll hit the ground running, you know, fully, you know, probably after Christmas, right after the new year type of deal.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
yeah. So, I mean, just to confirm, if we do the 4th, we don't see it going over an hour. Is that,
No, because honestly, I won't read the whole thing again.
Okay.
I'll just make sure when I send it to you too, what I might even do is highlight the areas that I change, so it jumps
Perfect,
right
okay.
out at you. You will entertain questions, although, you know, what we could do is, as long as we don't hit reply all in any subsequent emails that go back and forth, if you have a question before the meeting, you can send it right to me, or Ann, and then we can answer it and kind of quarterback the feedback that way, then we won't violate open meeting law. And
No,
then go,
perfect.
we can expedite that meeting on the 4th, get down to business and
Yeah, I would just have to leave probably around like 6:10 the latest that night. That's all. So if, but I could do December 4th, like I say, as long as we were done by around 6:10, that works for me.
That's fine. Fine here.
All right.
Yeah, it
We'll
sounds
see.
good.
All right, good. So we can do like 5 to 6 or whatever. Perfect.
Does anyone else have anything else to add?
just a thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, that was
Thank you.
that's
for
definitely thorough. I know that took some effort to do, so great
Yeah,
job.
thank you.
Yeah, good job.
And I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Motion carries 3-0. All right, guys.
All right.
Thank
Have
you
a
much.
happy Thanksgiving.
Have a happy
Hey, you
Thanksgiving.
too. Thanks.